In 1939, the Pennsylvania Railroad unveiled what should have been the future of American rail. 140 feet of streamlined steel, the largest steam locomotive ever constructed. It could top 100 miles per hour, yet it was effectively barred from the very network it was built to revolutionize. The S1 did not fail for lack of power. It failed because nothing around it could match its pace. On March 13th, 1939, the gates of the New York World's Fair opened wide, and there, shining beneath the pavilion lights, stood the Pennsylvania Railroad S1. At more than 140 feet long, longer than a blue whale, longer than most city blocks, it stretched across the exhibition hall like a glimpse of the future. Raymond Loewy's streamlined casing, all sweeping chrome and bold curves, captivated the crowds. This was not merely a locomotive, it was a monument to American ambition, a promise that speed and elegance could conquer any distance. Throughout the fair, the S1 staged its own kind of performance. Mounted high on rollers, its 7-foot driving wheels turned steadily at 60 miles per hour, powered by its own steam. Visitors watched the rods blur and pistons drive. The machine logged nearly 50,000 simulated miles without advancing an inch along the track. Children pressed their faces to the glass. Engineers jotted notes, and reporters sent stories home describing the dawn of a new age. The S1 carried lettering not for the Pennsylvania Railroad, but for American railroads, a symbol of national pride, a technological wonder meant to surpass anything before it. During those months, the S1 was more than a train. It was hope forged in steel, a spectacle daring the world to imagine what rail travel could become. But beyond the fairgrounds, the real challenge waited on tracks built for a different era. Altoona Works and Baldwin Locomotive Works joined forces to create something unprecedented. The S1 measured 140 feet, 2.5 inches from coupler to coupler, longer than some bridges and nearly twice the length of the largest locomotives then in service. Its wheel arrangement, described as 6-4-4-6, was unique. 6 leading wheels, 2 sets of 4 driving wheels, each 7 feet in diameter, and 6 trailing wheels, all fixed within a single rigid frame. The driving wheels alone, at 7 feet in diameter, were the largest ever fitted to such a locomotive. Beneath its streamlined exterior, the S1 embodied bold ambition. The boiler extended nearly the entire length of the engine, feeding massive cylinders on each side. Inside the cab, engineers faced an array of gauges and controls worthy of an ocean liner. Every element was designed for speed, stable at 100 miles per hour, capable of hauling 1,000-ton trains with ease. The cost reached $669,780, enough to build an entire fleet of conventional engines. Yet the S1 was never intended to be ordinary. It was built to represent the future, a machine so advanced it seemed limited only by the rails beneath it. But for all its size and strength, the S1 concealed a growing flaw. A rigid, unyielding frame that would soon prove too much for the world around it. It was built to dominate. The S1's strength became its downfall. At 77 feet 9.5 inches from pilot to trailing truck, its rigid frame was longer than most houses. Unlike articulated locomotives that could flex through curves, the S1 was constructed as a single inflexible beam of steel. On straight track, this provided stability at high speeds. But American railways are not endless straight lines. They twist and curve, especially near stations and yards. The S1's frame allowed only 2.25 inches of lateral movement, barely more than the width of a thumb. That slight allowance was meant to help the wheels shift through curves, but it fell far short for the tight layouts of most routes. Nearly half the S1's weight, 47%, rested on its driving wheels, with the remainder spread across its massive six-wheel trucks. This was intended to keep the locomotive balanced, but in practice it reduced the force pressing the drivers onto the rails. On paper, the S1 looked like the future. Long, sleek, and powerful. On the track, its size became a drawback. The rigid wheelbase resisted every curve, straining against the rails, while its limited lateral movement could not compensate. Each bend risked derailment or heavy wear, and the engine could only reach its full potential on rare stretches of perfectly straight mainline. The S1 was built for speed, but it could not adapt to the world it was meant to master. On the open run between Chicago and Crestline, the S1 finally had space to prove itself. With its boiler thundering and the throttle wide open, it raced along the rails at a confirmed 100.97 miles per hour, a figure that briefly placed it among legends. The 7-foot drivers spun so quickly they blurred, the massive pistons hammering out more than 76,000 pounds of tractive effort. This was not speed for its own sake. The S1 could haul a 1,350-ton train, a feat that overshadowed the workhorses of its era. But every mile came at a staggering cost. Each run consumed 48,000 pounds of coal and drained 36,000 gallons of water, enough to fill a backyard swimming pool, emptied and refilled every trip. The S1 did not just burn fuel, it devoured resources with a hunger unmatched by any other locomotive. Every surge of speed meant more strain, more maintenance, more expense. The numbers were undeniable. For all its strength, the S1 was a rolling cost center, a machine that could outrun almost anything, yet never outrun its own appetite. The S1's future narrowed to a single corridor. Chicago to Crestline, Ohio, 283 miles of nearly arrow-straight track, became its entire domain. Nowhere else on the Pennsylvania Railroad could the giant operate. Its rigid frame, too long for most curves, kept it off the twisting routes that defined the rest of the system. Turntables, the essential platforms used to turn locomotives, were too short for its length. Yard tracks and station approaches, built for smaller and more flexible engines, forced the S1 to slow to a crawl or take detours. There was no escaping it. The S1 was confined by its own size. For 6 years, the locomotive thundered between Chicago and Crestline, always on borrowed time. Each run wore down rails and stressed switches. Dispatchers and shop crews adapted as best they could, but the S1's limitations became impossible to ignore. Other engines could be reassigned, rerouted, or rotated across the network. The S1 had nowhere else to go. On May 5, 1946, it made its final run. 3 years later, in 1949, the Pennsylvania Railroad quietly ordered it scrapped. There was no ceremony, no farewell, only the slow, silent work of cutting a legend apart. The engine built to define the future had simply run out of track. Engineers in pressed uniforms climbed into the cab with a sense of awe, but that feeling quickly turned uneasy. The S1 demanded more than skill. It demanded trust in a machine that did not always return it. Crews spoke in hushed tones about its long, rigid wheelbase, the way it resisted every curve, and the constant threat of wheel slip when the throttle was opened wide. Some called it the Queen Mary, majestic yet out of place on American rails. Others, less generous, called it 140 feet of trouble. No rulebook ever formally banned the S1. There was no official order from Pennsylvania Railroad management, no union bulletin marking it off limits. Yet the outcome was the same. Crews traded assignments to avoid it. Dispatchers quietly adjusted schedules, assigning the S1 only when no other locomotive could handle the run. Stories spread faster than the train itself. Tales of it reaching 140 miles per hour, figures that lived in headlines rather than logbooks. In reality, its verified top speed was just over 197 miles per hour. The rest was rumor, smoke, and uneasy laughter from men who preferred to be anywhere else. In the end, it was not a mechanical failure that ended the S1's story, but a human one. When the people responsible for operating a machine lose confidence in it, its fate is sealed. The S1 was never officially outlawed, but it was quietly, decisively set aside. Innovation can dazzle, but reality defines the limits. The S1 did not fail for lack of ambition. It failed because the world around it would not adapt. Even today, breakthroughs matter only if they fit the systems we already have. Progress is not just invention, it is adaptation.